My name is Deborah Cooper, and I have the privilege today of interviewing my father, Robert A. Jones from Lebanon. Mr. Jones, tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up?
Lebanon. I was born in Lebanon, always lived in Lebanon, and still do.
And still do. When were you born there?
September 1915.
Did you attend Lebanon schools?
I did.
Tell us a little bit about your family.
My family?
Yes.
Oh, I had two sisters, two older sisters, a younger brother, and my father and mother. My father was an attorney, and he was legislature. In fact, he was Speaker of the House, I think in 1921.
What was your father's name?
Fred A. Jones.
And he was a lawyer, you said?
Yes.
What kind of law did he practice?
But everything, I would say he probably was a trial lawyer. But he was more interested in politics, really, than the law.
Did you have any opportunity to observe your father practicing law?
Oh, yes. When I was a kid, I used to go with my father many times.
Tell us a little bit about that. Did you ever go to a court with him?
Oh, yes. I remember going to court in Plymouth, New Hampshire. Oh, 2 or 3 day trial, I remember that. Yeah. And
did you ever go to his office with him and watch him work?
I hung around his office a lot, and when he'd go somewhere, I usually went with him.
Did you attend Lebanon schools?
Lebanon High School, yes.
And were you in high school during the Depression?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
What was the...
I graduated high school in 1933.
Okay. What was the climate in Lebanon at that time?
It was bad. It was bad. The woolen mills were down, shut down, and there was a lot of unemployment at that time.
Were the woolen mills the primary source of employment for people?
At that time, yes.
Were there many of them?
There were 3: Mascoma Woolen Mill, Lebanon Woolen Mill, Lebanondale Mill.
After you graduated from high school, did you decide to go directly on to college?
No, my father thought I was too young, so I stayed out and worked a year.
Was it difficult finding work during that time?
Well, yes, I think it was. Yeah, you know, most jobs would come, they'd have advertise for a clerk's job in the A&P, and there must be 50 more people in line waiting to be interviewed. And usually the married men with children got the jobs. So.
What kind of work did you do the year between high school and college?
Oh, see, first job I worked for was, I had was Kendrick and Davis Key Shop. I think I got $12 a week there. And then I worked on we had a federal program, WPA. I worked on the road in the winter, except one day it was 50 below zero. We didn't go to work that day. Then after that, I worked in the Mascoma Mill in the carpentry department.
And this was for how long?
For a year, and I started college the following September.
Where did you attend college?
I went to Dartmouth.
How did you happen to choose Dartmouth?
Well, I think my father chose Dartmouth. He graduated from Dartmouth in 1908, and I had applied to Harvard and had a scholarship at Harvard, but I went, my father was quite domineering, and I went where he chose.
What was it like going to college in the 30s?
Well, college was great, you know. It was, I worked for my meals. I worked in the Hanover Inn coffee shop for 4 years going through college. I think you miss quite a bit of the college life when you work for your meals.
What was your major?
Economics.
Did you know while you were in college what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
I had no idea. I had no idea at all, you know. And but I think my father made up his mind I was going to be a lawyer. So, well, in the fall, he had me pack my clothes, and he took me to Boston, BU Law School. I ended law school.
Did he tell you why he was taking you to Boston?
I knew. I think I know where I knew where I was going, where I was going. You know. But I hadn't planned on going to law school. It was his idea.
Mm-hmm. Where was Boston University located at that time?
At Ashburton Place, which was near the State House.
Mm-hmm. Was it a large law school at that time?
Not too big. I think I can't remember exactly how many were in my class. I think slightly over 100, I think.
Was the number of law students...
Excuse me.
Would you like some water? Was the number of law students influenced by the economic times? Were you still feeling the effects of the Depression?
Well, I think so. I think a lot of people in the same boat I was, weren't sure what they were going to do, decided to go to law school.
Just like today.
Probably, yeah.
And law school was 3 years then?
Yes.
Any memorable events during law school that you want to relate?
I don't think so. No.
Did you follow it?
I enjoyed law school.
What was it you enjoyed about it?
Well, especially freshman year, would have criminal law and contracts and torts, and the discussion we would have with my roommates. It was great. We'd have a lot of bull sessions and argue about the law.
Did you follow any particular course of study while you were in law school?
No.
You didn't have any particular career in mind that you wanted to pursue?
No, I didn't. I always thought I'd end up back in Lebanon with my father.
When did you graduate from law school?
1941.
Okay. Did you go back to Lebanon at that time?
Well, during law school, I worked my way through law school by working at the racetrack, Rockingham, and my sister lives in Haverhill, Massachusetts, so I'd go between Haverhill and Lebanon. After I took the bar exam, we would waited until fall to find out whether you passed or not. And of course, then everybody was afraid of the war coming and the draft, and so you didn't really settle down because everybody thought they were going to be drafted before long. And
so did you practice law in the fall after you passed the bar?
I went in my father's office and was there for a while. I wouldn't say I really practiced law, but I think I had one or two small matters that I handled.
And did you enter the service?
Yes, in March of 1941, I went in the Navy.
41 or 42?
42, excuse me.
After Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
And you served throughout the war in the Navy?
Yes, yes.
When were you discharged?
In December 1945.
And what did you do after your discharge?
I went, in January, I went back to Lebanon and started to practice law in my father's office. I didn't work for him. We were never partners, but we practiced out of the same offices.
Did you have any people who advised you at the time that you started practicing law?
Not that I can recall.
Did your father provide some pointers on how to practice?
Yes. I'd get anything I had. I would go to see my father for advice.
Amos Blandon lived up around that way, didn't he?
Amos Blandon lived in Bath.
And what position did Mr. Blandon hold?
He was a Superior Court judge at that time, and he always helped the lawyers, and especially the lawyers in Grafton County. And in fact, all the lawyers that came back out of the service met with Judge Blandon, and he brought them up to date, and he had a full one-day session with them, bringing them up to date on the law. And I missed that, but because I missed it, he came to Hanover from Bath one day and called me and spent some time with me, and in fact let me borrow his notebook. All the judges used to have their notebooks and on the cases and different procedures, and that was a big help.
What was it like practicing law in Lebanon in 1946?
Well, there were very few lawyers there then. There was my father, Fred A. Jones, Norris Cotton, who soon left the practice and was elected to Congress. John Cronin, and he soon became postmaster. And Fred Carr, Fred was deaf, and he did mostly the title work in real estate for the Mascoma Savings Bank. And before long, Charles Tesreau came in and became a partner of Norris Cotton. And it wasn't long before Charles Tesreau and I were the only lawyers that tried cases in Lebanon, and we were the only ones. There was no lawyers in Hanover.
How many in Lebanon now, do you know?
Now between Lebanon and West Lebanon now there's 50 lawyers, approximately 50.
And back then only 2?
In Hanover there was, most of the time there was no lawyers. And then Fezenden went there for a short time, and he couldn't make a living in Hanover, so he moved to Bristol. Jack Stebbins tried it on his own for a while, and he didn't do too well, so he became partners with Cotton and Tesreau in Lebanon, moved to Lebanon.
So at some point with Fred Carr doing the bank work, was it you, Charlie Tesreau, and Jack Stebbins doing most of the trial work?
Yes. Well, Jack didn't do too much trial work. Tesreau and I did most of the trial work around there.
Aside from the trial work, what kind of work did you do starting out?
Well, did a little bit of it. I did a little bit of everything. Didn't make too many lawyers didn't make too many deeds in Lebanon because the town clerks, the lawyers charged $5 for deeds, and the town clerks would do the deeds for $3. And then we had a surveyor, a great surveyor, Sam Stevens. He would survey the lot and do the deed for $5, and he could do it would be a better deed than what the lawyers could do.
So not too many deeds.
No, we didn't do very many deeds. The divorces, well, of course, right after the war, you had a lot of quick marriages. So the GI was going off overseas or something, and they decided to get married, and they weren't really compatible. And so there were many, many divorces right after the war.
Do you remember what a divorce cost in those days?
Yeah, I do. It was $75 was a lawyer charge, plus the costs, which the costs were very minor, but we got many divorces. In fact, I remember one time in Lebanon that my father got 19 divorces one day, and I got 7. And it was usually, usual grounds was conduct injurious to health. And some of the judges thought that was a little too easy, and they made us get a letter, an affidavit from a doctor that the person seeking the divorce health had been injured in some way. And so usually if a woman come in to get a divorce, you know, and you'd have to tell her that she had a loss of appetite and headaches, and she had to go see the doctor. And usually we had to recommend a doctor who knew how to write the letters for the court.
You did a lot of divorces. Any marriages?
Well, Pop Conlon, who was the clerk of the municipal court and also the probation officer, did most of the marriages. But he was gone one weekend, and a couple wanted to get married. And so they wanted to get married in my office. So on Saturday, Saturday morning, I put on my old clothes and I went down and cleaned all the office and even mopped the floors. I had everything picked up. Spent some time really fixing the office up. And I didn't know, and hunting for the ceremony, I didn't know, you know, where to start a ceremony. And, but I finally found it in Justice and Sheriff. Very good ceremony, I thought. And the people finally came. We had a nice wedding, and I was wondering about what you charged, how you go about setting the fee. And so I looked up in the statutes and found the fee for marriage was 50 cents. And after all the work I'd been doing, I wasn't going to say you owe me 50 cents. So got through the ceremony. A fellow said, well, how much do I owe you? So I said, well, that's perfectly all right. So he said, thanks a lot, and left. So I went to see Mr. Conlon Monday morning, first thing, to find out what you do. I said, well, you don't tell them that they owe you 50 cents, do you? And he said, no. I said, well, what do you do? And he said, I say, whatever it's worth to you. And so that's what I did after that, and things worked out much better.
What kind of, how did you get clients in those days? You returned from the war. You indicated that some attorneys didn't seem to be able to make it in Hanover, just a few miles away. How did you get business in those days?
Well, just waiting for it in the office, and I suppose people you knew would come in to see you.
At some point after you started practicing, you ran for county attorney, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I started serving in 1947.
What was that like?
Oh,
Did they call it county attorney or county solicitor?
county solicitor it was at that time. That was a part-time job then, with no help. You know, I was secretary. You had to use your own secretary, and you didn't get reimbursed for that. I think the pay was $2,400 a year. And after 2 years, I tried to get the legislature to give me a raise, but it was a tough job trying to get through they referred it to the Grafton County delegation. And there was one representative there was against giving me any raise because it was a part-time job. And he said I could probably earn $1,000 a year from my practice. But I finally did get a raise.
So that brought you up to what?
I think $3,600 a year.
What kinds of crimes what was the task of the county solicitor in those days? Was it the prosecution of crimes like the county attorney does today?
Yes, yeah, but also they were a lot of small towns had a police officer that wasn't didn't have the confidence to try the cases in court, so a lot of times you had to try misdemeanors for some police officer. I'd have to go to Bristol quite often, I remember, to help the police department there.
You were trying cases both as county attorney and then also in your private practice at about the same time?
Yes, yes.
Was your practice primarily in Grafton County?
I did occasionally in Sullivan County and once in a great while some other county.
What was it like trying cases in those days? Was there the same amount of discovery that there is now?
Oh no, discovery and even depositions were unusual. Usually, if you've got case, if you talk to the other lawyer, if you couldn't settle the case and go to court, and try it out in court. We didn't have depositions or interrogatories.
How long would it take to get a case to trial?
Not long, it'd be a matter of just a few months. You got speedy trials. Of course, in Grafton County, we had 3 different terms of court. Lebanon was January term of court, Plymouth was May term of court, and September was Woodsville term of court. In Lebanon, the court was in the town hall on the 3rd floor, and on the 2nd floor was the movies. And we had to compete with the movies a lot of times, and especially if it was a good movie, you had to be quick in presenting your cases because the judge and the clerk of court wanted to go downstairs and see the movie. They never paid either. They always used to stand up and back in the theater. And those 3 different places, the jury trial was going on. Everybody wanted to find out how the decision was going after the evidence was all in. So deputy sheriffs used to listen at the doors and keep us informed of what the vote was. And over in Plymouth, there was a fellow named Scotty who owned the restaurant, and he had in Plymouth the jury room was on the 2nd floor, and then there were a lot of windows, and he'd go around back the side, and he had arranged some kind of signals for one of the jurymen, so he could always keep you informed of how the case was going, how the vote was going.
You indicated that there was that the court sat in 3 different places depending on the term of court. And one of the places was Woodsville, is that right?
That's right.
And at some point there was consideration for building a new courthouse in Grafton County, wasn't there?
Oh, gee, we worked on that. You know, we had the 3 different sections, Woodsville, Plymouth, and Lebanon sections, and we needed a new courthouse, no question about it. But we couldn't ever agree on where the courthouse would be located. We'd have a meeting of the delegation, we've had one meeting of the delegation, and they voted to build a new courthouse. But then they came to vote to locate it, and somebody vote to locate it in Plymouth, and Lebanon and Woodsville would vote against it. And they'd put it in Lebanon, and Woodsville and Plymouth would vote against that. You couldn't get a majority. So, and the lawyers were working on it, trying to get a compromise or figure something out. So we had a meeting of the Grafton County Bar Association scheduled for the Orford. This was a dinner meeting.
Neutral territory.
Yeah, and Sam Samaha was clerk of court living in Woodsville, wanted, of course, the courthouse to be located in Woodsville. So he rounded up everybody that could possibly vote for Woodsville, including getting Henry Kai's Boston attorney, real estate attorney in Boston, who had his home in Haverhill, to come to the meeting. So he came. And we went through the usual procedure to vote to locate the courthouse in Lebanon, and Woodsville and Plymouth vote against it. Couldn't get a majority. And they voted to Plymouth and Lebanon, Woodsville. Finally, Sam Samaha made a motion to locate it in the Woodsville-Haverhill area. And George Papademos at that time was living in Woodsville. And he had everybody raised their hand and wanted for Woodsville except George Papademos. And so Sam said, George was slightly deaf, so Sam yelled out, "George, George." He said, "They're voting on Woodsville." George said, "Sam, I know it." He said, "I'm moving to Lebanon next week."
Did Woodsville get enough votes?
No, and so that, and then there was no new courthouse for about 10 years. Lost my snap.
So it was another 10 years before they had the court?
Yes, and then, so the only way you could get it was to vote to locate it in the Woodsville area. And so Plymouth people and the Lebanon people realized that, gave in and voted to locate the new courthouse in the Woodsville area.
And that was built when, sometime in the 70s?
I think so, yeah.
And after that, did the court continue to ride circuit throughout the county?
Not at about the same time the new courthouse was built. They changed the statutes so that the Superior Court and Probate Court was only held in Woodsville.
You talked about trying cases both as county attorney and as a private practitioner. Do you have any interesting cases you want to relate?
Well, I did. One of the cases I had, a few times I was in federal court. It wasn't my case, but Attorney Barber from Brattleboro represented two young fellows. That one of them was a teacher, and the other was a salesman for an automobile company in Brattleboro, Vermont. And they went to pick up some cars. This man that worked for the garage, and his brother was a teacher, and a couple other fellows. And they picked up about 4 cars, and they were coming through Keene, New Hampshire. And a police officer in Keene stopped them. And I guess the guy working in the garage must have been a little wise to the police officer, but anyway, he arrested the teacher and the automobile salesman were both arrested. They spent the night in the jail in Keene. And so they brought suit for false imprisonment against the chief of police and the police officer. And Attorney Barber needed New Hampshire counsel, so I was his New Hampshire counsel. Tried the case in Concord in federal court, and everything went in very well. And Tut Bell's father was a lawyer for the defendants. The chief of police hadn't done anything, so he was, at the end of the plaintiff's case, he was discharged as a defendant. But when the case went on, continued against the police officer, and went in well. And Tut Bell's father was giving his argument to the jury, and he was waving his hand around, and one juror stood up and he says, "Go stick your hand in somebody else's face. I've already made up my mind." Seriously. Everything shut right down, and Judge Connors finally declared a mistrial. And that was the end
Understandably.
of that case, yeah.
Did you try it again?
I think it was settled eventually, yeah. It was.
Any other cases you want to relate?
Yeah, I had, well, one as a county attorney.
Sure.
Well, I had went out to there was a killing at Mascoma Lake. I think it was in Mascoma Lake in Enfield, New Hampshire. I was called out there at nighttime, or late at night, and found that 2 women had been killed. What had happened is this woman who was owned a cottage, and she was married. This was her second marriage, I guess, and wouldn't get along with her husband, so she kicked him out. She was living in the cottage with her daughter, and she and her daughter were out that evening, and 2 men brought them home, left them at the door, and left. And the husband, the older woman, was inside the cottage. When they came in, he shot and killed them both, and then shot himself. And when I got out the cottage, both women were dead, and the man was shot himself, was lying on the floor in a pool of blood, but he was still alive, they said. Unconscious, of course, and had bled a lot. And it seemed forever for the ambulance to get there, but I guess it wasn't actually that long. And the ambulance came and took him away to the hospital in Hanover, the Mary Hitchcock Hospital. And we spent some time at the scene of the crime. And finally, when he finished, I went one with the state police troopers, and we decided we better find out what time the man had died. So I went to the hospital and to inquire. And when we got the doctor, I asked him about what was the time of death of the man, and he said, "Oh, nothing wrong with him." I said, "What do you mean there's nothing wrong with him?" Well, he said he shot himself, and to shoot himself, he put the rifle on the floor, and he bent over the rifle. But he had quite a bay window, and all he did was shoot himself through 2 layers of fat, and turned out he wasn't mortally wounded.
Was he prosecuted?
Yes. He went life term in prison, but died soon after he was sent to state prison.
I think you told me when we were talking that it's a good case of the difference between trying case through discovery where you find the other side's evidence, and trial by ambush where you're surprised. Tell me about that story.
Oh, I had there were two girls who were sisters parked on Hanover Street in Lebanon before the street was closed off. It was the main street. And there was a fellow named Monfat driving a truck for Densmore Brick Company. And he came along, and there was an accident with the girls who had parked on Hanover Street. They claimed that they had the door open and the truck ran into the door, made considerable damage. And the truck driver was saying that they opened the door into the truck. Well, it was getting close to time to trial. It was going to be tried in Lebanon, and the driver, Mr. Monfat, came to me and he said, "You know, the girls, that car's sold," but he said, "They sold it, but I think I know where it is." And I said, "Well, where is it?" Well, he said he thought it was in Cook's Junkyard in Norwich, Vermont. Of course, this was December, wintertime, and there was a lot of snow that year. And so he and I decided to go look for it. And we had to end up with hundreds and hundreds of cars in that junkyard. And it took us a couple hours and about 3 feet of snow, but we finally found the car. And a couple of days later, he went back, took the door off the car, and we took the door, and opposite the courtroom in Lebanon was a little closet, and I got one from the Woolworths, one of those master keys, one key to put the door, and we put the door in there, and I locked that covered up. And trying the case, George Papademos was on the other side, and trying the case, and it got late in the afternoon, and I was cross-examining the husband of one of the sisters, the one who owned the car, and I kept watching the clock. It was after 4:30, and we usually went till 5 o'clock, and I kept delaying until it got about 4:45, just about that time. And then I asked him if he saw that car door, could he recognize it? And he said, "No, he thought he could." So I signaled by Mr. Monfat, and he went and got the car door and brought it in. So then it's getting, about 10 minutes, 7 minutes of 5. And I said, "Is that your car door?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, time to close for the day, judges. And they recessed on that. And the next day, the jury was out less than 10 minutes and came with a verdict for the defendants.
I assume that the car door demonstrated that it had happened the way the defendants testified.
It was certain from that the door had been opened into the truck.
That's a good one. How did your practice in Lebanon evolve through the years? You said that you had been county attorney for a while. How long were you county attorney?
For 6 years. Okay. And I was county commissioners for 6 years after that. Let's see, I was... And I was county solicitor from 1947 to 1952, county commissioner from 1953 to 1958. The reason I became county commissioner is I wanted to keep in politics. I had known all along that Henry Dodge was the Grafton County probate judge, and he was nearing retirement about that time. But I wanted to keep my name alive. And so I ran for county commissioner for 3 terms.
And were you appointed probate judge?
Worked in probate judge, and then in 1958 I became probate judge, and served until 1982.
Almost 25 years.
Yes.
Who appointed you probate judge?
Judge Dwinell, Governor Dwinell, excuse me, Governor Lane Dwinell.
What was the probate judge riding circuit in those days the same way?
Yes, I had to go to Lebanon, Woodsville, Littleton, and Plymouth.
And was this a full-time or a part-time position?
Just a part-time job. Used to work out, so, you know, and then I had, those were the regular terms of court, and then I had special terms of court that you got paid for each matter in court every Thursday in Woodsville. And Fred Carr was retiring about that time. He'd done all the work for Mascoma Savings Bank. So I took over and started doing the work for Mascoma Savings Bank, and especially the title work. But the probate work wasn't that busy, so that I combined. I would go to Woodsville in the morning. I get up there 7 o'clock in the morning, work in the Register of Deeds office until 9 o'clock, and then go in the probate office. I will probate until noontime, and then usually in the afternoon go back and do work in the Register of Deeds office again, because and there were only 2 women in the probate office. There was a register of probate, and then she had 1 woman helping her, and they usually completed all their work before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Weren't that busy at that time.
What kind of work did the probate judge in the probate office do in those days?
Just about everything with probate, administering the estates, guardianships, marriages.
Was there something that you seemed to do more often than other things, or was it pretty equally divided?
Well, administration of estates was primarily the bulk of the work.
Mm-hmm. So how often did you actually sit? You said you had a regular term in the different towns and then a special term.
It was 1 day a month, except during the month of August.
Do you have any idea what that paid when you first started?
I think around $3,400. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did the type of cases that you did evolve over the years as probate judge? The type of work that you did?
Yeah, when I became probate judge, I gradually stopped trying cases. I didn't, because there was a conflict. that might have to fight in Superior Court against a lawyer, and the next day he's got to come in and settle an account, and I have to settle his determine his fee. So gradually I worked out at trying cases, and I just handled the job as probate judge together with my real estate work. And that's eventually what happened.
So you started focusing primarily on real estate in your private practice?
Yes.
Was that a good area to focus in on at the time? What was the climate?
Yes, it was great. That's when real estate was booming, and you know, when I first started practicing, they could buy cut-over timberland for $10 an acre. You could get, you know, 200 or 300 acres, paid nothing for it. When I first got married in 1949, my wife and I moved in a 2-apartment house that the manager of the Woolworths had just purchased for $3,500, and now that house would, the same house would go for well over $100,000.
What was responsible for the boom in those days? Was Lebanon growing? What was happening in Lebanon?
Yes, Lebanon was growing, and prosperity was here. The land was becoming more valuable. I had a client, Peony Goodwin, who was in the logging business, and he would buy a farm for the timber family, but buildings, land, and the timber, and he would sell off the usually sell off the house for, fix it up and sell it for what he paid for everything. So we'd have the timber for nothing, and then he'd end up with the land, which became extremely valuable, and he became a multi-millionaire.
Was there a lot of growth in industry in Lebanon at the same time?
Yes, there were, in Lebanon, first started out, the woolen mills were the three woolen mills were the main employer, and when the woolen mills went out of business, they had a lot of small industries move into Lebanon, and also the split ball bearing, which later became miniature precision bearings or something. They became, now they're the biggest employer, I guess, in Lebanon.
And did the number of lawyers tend to grow as the town grew?
Yes, they did. They did.
Practicing in Grafton County, you were a member of the Bar Association, which is known for being the longest continually sitting bar association in the country. Tell me a little bit about the Grafton Bar Association.
Oh, it was a great bar association. We met usually every term in court, and they were all good friends. But we didn't have enough to make it worthwhile to go out to have a dinner somewhere. So we usually invited the Register of Deeds and the Register of Probate and the deputy sheriffs. So we'd make a big enough crowd to make it worthwhile to go out to dinner. And we did, and we were a close-knit group. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of close friends. In fact, Charlie Tesreau was my best man at my wedding, and he and I tried a lot of cases against each other. But still good friends.
Did the Bar Association have any meetings or do any educational component, or was it primarily a social function at that time?
No, we'd usually, at the annual meeting, we usually would have a speaker, and we had different projects. And of course, we were working on a new courthouse for a while, and we furnished the lawyer's lounge and the library there.
What was it like as things continued to grow? Did the Grafton County Bar become more active? Did you have more people involved in some of the meetings and social events that you've described?
Yes, they became more active.
What was the relationship of the lawyers when you indicated your relationship with Charlie Tesreau? If you were trying to
we were close with all of them. You knew them all well, and you could call them up. You settled. Most cases were settled, and you could settle over the telephone. It didn't have to be in writing. They didn't make a lot of motions. And you either settled the case over the telephone or face-to-face, or you went to court.
Were there any women in the Grafton County Bar in those days?
Yeah, they had Beryl Aldridge, was from Lisbon. She did mostly real estate work, and Pauline Merrill in Bristol, and she did mostly real estate work with some probate work, and the same was true of Beryl Aldridge. And then finally Carolyn Gray came in, and Carolyn Gray was, I guess she'd gone 2 years to law school and then got married and raised a family. After 20-something years, she went back to law school and took the bar exam, and then moved to Canaan and practiced in Canaan for a while. And she was very hard to settle cases with. She would never give in. You know. One time I had a case. She represented Earl Webster, had a feed company in Canaan. I represented a fellow was a farmer named LeBombard, and he couldn't pay his feed bill. He got up to several $1,000s, and so Karen Gray, on behalf of Webster's, had attached everything, all the land, the buildings, and the cattle, and everything else. So she had a sheriff's sale of all the cattle, and we were up there. And I looked up what was exempt, and I found that one cow is exempt from attachment. So during the process of sale, I told her, that one cow was exempt, and she agreed. And she kept after me to pick out the cow I wanted for attachment. I said, no, I want to wait. They were going for $200, $250 a cow, and finally went for $400. And I said, that's my cow. And she said, there's no way. You're going to have to take the average. So I think I was right, but it would have cost me too much to go to court against them. So I ended up with the average.
Yeah.
For my exempt cow.
Did you ever take any Supreme Court appeals?
Did I think?
Yeah. Did you ever have any cases before the Supreme Court?
Yeah, not very many. I had.
What was it like in those days? Did you have to brief and argue?
My son Douglas had a friend, went to law school, and he studied some of the cases that I had in the Supreme Court, and I hadn't filed a brief, so he called me No Brief Jones.
In those days, why didn't you file a brief?
Well, a couple of them, they said it didn't amount to enough money, that it wasn't worthwhile for my client. Even if he lost the Supreme Court, it probably wouldn't be any better off than what he'd have to pay to go to the Supreme Court.
Did you argue in the Supreme Court if you hadn't filed a brief, or did you just...
No, I didn't even show up, so yeah. That's why they called me No Brief. Mm-hmm.
You continued as a solo practitioner for a period of time. Did you ever take anybody else in?
Oh, yes, took my son, Douglas, in, and my son-in-law, Jay Cooper, and eventually they took over the office. I sold the office out to them.
You're retired now?
And yes.
Yeah.
I still like to run the office, but I don't do very much.
Any general reflections on the practice or your practice as a probate judge?
Oh, I enjoyed every minute of it. I think I really had a lot of fun practicing law, and I'm sorry that today it just isn't as much fun as it used to be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.